Today I am Jove Aguas, and welcome to my lectures on ethics. And today I am going to discuss about Plato's ethics. So some introduction here. Plato's ethical theory, like the other Greek philosophers, is an attempt to answer the question, what is the good life? Following his teacher Socrates, that virtue is knowledge, Plato develops the thesis that life of reason is the happiest and the best. Two basic philosophical conceptions which are relevant to Plato's ethical theory. First, you have the doctrine of teleology, and the second is the theory of ideas or the theory of forms. First, what is the doctrine of teleology? This doctrine stresses that everything in the universe has a purpose or function or a goal within a harmonious hierarchy of purposes. So there are several goals or purposes in life or in reality, and these purposes are arranged in a hierarchical order. Second theory is the theory of forms or the theory of ideas, which stresses that general concepts or ideas are not derived from experience but are logically prior to it. They exist by themselves and in their world, which Plato called the world of ideas. We're going to discuss this, explain this a little bit later. No? So, ideas, for example, like good, humanity, or even justice, they are unchanging. But the physical objects that copy them in the physical world are changeable. This is part of Plato's two world theory. There is the world of forms, which is the perfect world, where all the ideas came from, and there is the physical world, the imperfect world, which is just a copy of what we have in the world of forms or in the world of ideas. Okay? So the physical objects that we find here in the physical world, in the world of experience, are simply copies, faint copies of the perfect ideas in the world of forms. So take, for example, goodness. There are some good things here in the physical world, but the real good is not found in this world, but in the world of ideas. So the good things that we find here are simply copies of the good, the ultimate good that we find in the world of ideas. So to further explain that, let's look at this analogy of Plato's two worlds. So you have the intelligible world here, that is the world of ideas, the world of forms, the perfect world. And this is the world of appearances, the physical world, the world that we experience. In the world of forms, we find the forms. The highest form is the good. And then the higher forms, these are the metaphysical forms. And then you have the mathematical forms or mathematical objects. So, like triangularity, circularity, etc. The metaphysical form would have justice, beauty, and so on and so forth. In the world of appearances or the physical world, you have the visible things, physical objects, etc. And then the other set would be the images, the pictures, reflections, visuals, etc. Now, on this side represents our mental states, okay? The states of our mind. Um, if we know these objects here, then we have either knowledge, episteme, or thinking, okay? So understanding, if we understand this. On the other hand, we have belief. in the world of idea, in the world of objects. You have belief or imagination. Okay? So there are four different mental states representing our knowledge of these objects. Okay. Now, another one very famous story or illustration of Plato is the allegory of the cave. It tells us about a group of prisoners or slaves who are chained inside a cave. Okay, so they are chained and they are only facing one direction, the wall of the cave here. Okay, so at the back you have a fire behind them, but of course they cannot see this fire because they are chained and they cannot turn around. Between the fire and the slaves, you can see here a pathway, a roadway. Okay, so people can pass through here. Okay, and people while passing through here, they can talk, they can make sounds, etc. So what is projected to the wall are the images of the objects passing through this pathway, of people passing through this pathway. Okay, but since they cannot turn around, they cannot see this. All they see are the images. They think that the images are real. Okay, and they hear voices, they hear sounds, but since they cannot understand, they cannot look, turn back around. No, so they just interpret the sounds as they hear them. Okay, so they think that the sounds that they hear are real, of course, and the objects or the shadows projected on the wall of the caves are real. Okay, so that's reality for them inside the cave. Okay, now it happened that one of the slaves was able to escape. Okay, he was able to escape, and then he saw the light, I mean the fire here, and he saw the situation and he was rather confused. Then he found a passage outside the cave or the cave. So he went outside. Then, of course, he's, he became disoriented. His eyes, well, felt weird and awkward, of course, because of the bright light outside of the cave. At first, he got a very blurry vision, but eventually he was able to see objects, the real objects, the plants, the trees, objects outside of the cave. And when he looked up, he saw the sun. Of course, the bright light of the sun is quite painful in the eyes, but eventually his vision was able to adjust. Therefore, he realized that this is different from the objects that they saw inside the cave. So, having understood all these things, he came back and then told his fellow slaves what he saw. But they did not believe. He thought that because he got out, he became crazy. He's now telling them crazy ideas. But of course, he, he knew already that all these are just images, are just shadows. The real objects are outside of the cave. Okay. So for Plato, the one who escaped was actually the philosopher because he saw the light, he saw reality. And these are ordinary people who still believe, in the images projected on the wall. Okay, so that's the allegory of the cave of Plato. Now, the ethics of science. So Plato maintains that ethics is as objective as the mathematical sciences, and Just as mathematics is concerned with forms or circularity, triangularity, and equality, ethics is also concerned with forms like justice, virtue, beautiful, good, etc. The ethical forms are objective standards of morality, which serve as guide and provide in life amidst arbitrary power and persuasion of society and the influence of our irrational desires and appetites. The bodily appetites, the irrational desires, and the shadow world of false values could persistently cloud our vision and tempt us away from the truth. Next point, the idea of the good. The idea of the good is the conception that unites the principle of teleology, principle of the hierarchy of purposes, and the theory of forms with ethics. The good is at once the final goal, which, of course, all things in the universe are seeking to realize, in the ultimate source of intelligibility and meaning. Remember, uh, when we find the highest form in the world of ideas is the good. That's why when we attain the good, we have already understood the meaning of reality, the meaning of our experience. In the world of knowledge, the idea of the good appears last of all, and it is actually seen with great effort. Okay? When understood, it is also inferred to be the universal author of all things beautiful and right. It's the parent of light, Lord of Lord, the Lord of light in this visible world, and the immediate source of reason and truth in the intellectual world. Now, there's a contrary claim to the claim of Plato, because even before he came, there were already some teachers, the Sophists, who claim otherwise. If Plato says there is a universal standard, objective standard of truth, of morality, the Sophists claim that there is no objective standard of truth, of all things, of morality, because man is the measure of all things. Protagoras, one of the Sophists, teaches that we base our moral norms either on subjective personal opinions or on social conventions, okay, or social acceptance. There are no higher moral standards beyond conventions, but such action or such notion would make it impossible to evaluate or criticize the moral norms of other society. So the sophist claims fall into some kind of a contradiction. Categories of the good. Plato believed that there are three categories of being good. First, some things are good for their own sake, but not for their own consequences. Well, maybe if you a night of merrymaking could be good for its own sake, but look at the consequences. The following day, what happens? Headaches, because of you had a good time the night before, but the consequences may not really very good. Second is some things are good for their own sake and for their consequences. Definitely, education is good for its own sake and for its consequences. You're going to have a very good and very nice career if you educate yourself. Third, some things are burdensome, no? But they have good consequences. Like, for example, when you are sick, you are supposed to take your pill, your medicine. It may be bitter, but of course, medicine has good consequences. Okay. So Plato claimed that the just life, the good life, falls into the second category: good for its own sake and good for its consequences. The highest form of good is the thing which anyone would prefer and gain happiness, both for its value and for its consequences. Now let's go to the next point: morality and human nature. The essential core of the person is the psyche or the soul. Okay? Psyche or the soul. Although we have one soul, based on our inner experience, we find conflicting and competing forces within us. And this is because of the three parts of the soul, namely our bodily appetites, second, our reason, and the spirit. The spirit representing our passion and the emotions. So we can say bodily appetite, reason, and emotion or spirit. So the bodily appetites are associated with our bodily needs and desires. These appetites, they pull us towards self or physical, sensual gratification. Reason is the rational and more reflective part of the soul and sometimes vetoes the urgings of the bodily appetites. This is it's reason which also has, reason has also its own rational desires, like desire for truth, desire for knowledge, desire for wisdom, understanding, etc., etc. The third is the spirit, which is associated with our passion or emotion. Spirit is distinct from the two because it can be moved oh, by either the bodily desires or by moral fervor. The spirit is a motive force, but it receives its direction from the two other faculties. It can follow the command of the appetite or the command of reason. The appetites are the lowest but the most dangerous of our desires. It is the voice that tells us, I want this, I want this, I want this, I love this, I like this, even in harmful or compromising situations. Hence, it is irrational to always follow our desires because it can put us in a very bad situation. It is reason, the highest faculty, that seeks the higher good. It is reason that controls the appetites and put order into the desires of the appetites. The spirit could either make a motive out of the competing demands of the appetites and reason. The appetites would naturally seek gratification, and reason must control the spirit's desire for self esteem and pride. Otherwise, it would compromise with the appetites and put the person in a very, very difficult, problematic situation. So, the appetite should not be under the influence of our emotions. We can be in trouble. So, to explain this further, again, Plato used this analogy of the charioteer. So you have the charioteer here, representing reason, and the two horses, according to Plato, in the Phaedrus, representing the appetite and the emotion. Okay? So the horse, the emotion is actually he calls this. The other one is a good, no, obedient horse, and the other one is a rough horse. But the point there is this: the appetite and the emotion can go do different directions. So it's up for reason for the charioteer to you know to take control. He can goad the horses this with the string with the the harness, or he can use his whip. Oh, this whip to command the horses. So in order for them to go straight, to go forward, there must be some kind of a harmony among reason, the appetite, and the emotion. Virtues. So there are four primary moral virtues for Plato: wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice. Each virtue finds place within the element of the soul. Okay? So it is wisdom that allows reason to be in control of the person and guides the other parts of the soul. Reason becomes like a commander, the charioteer, director who understands the whole picture and helps the other parts to play their respective roles. The virtue of courage enables the spirit to subordinate itself to the counsel of reason and applies its energy, ambitions, and assertiveness toward the right goal. The healthy spirit holds fast to the command of reason and ignores the pulse of pain and pleasure. With the virtue of courage, the spirit finds its glory and esteem only in doing what is right, and fears what is genuinely fearful, and bravely confronts our enemies of truth and goodness. The virtue of temperance is manifested when the appetites control and moderate their desires for pleasure and subordinate themselves to the two higher elements. Temperance is not a complete denial of the body's needs and desire, but a sense of balance and mastery. It does not mean that if you are temperate, you starve yourself to death or you deprive yourself of the physical pleasure or the physical joys. You still need them, but they have to be moderated. So that's the virtue of temperance. A good balance of desires. Okay. So justice, finally, is the overarching virtue which is present when all the other elements have achieved their correct balance within the person. So the just person is one who possesses wisdom, has developed his reason, he developed the virtue of courage and temperance, and in whom all the other elements or faculties play their roles and maintain their proper places. Justice is a condition wherein all the various elements of the person are balanced and in the right order. The morally virtuous person is one who is rationally, biologically, or physically and emotionally balanced. In Platonic terms, a virtuous person is one who is wise, temperate, courageous, and just. In the virtuous person, desires and passion function harmoniously under the governance of reason. Knowledge produces a harmonious person in the sense that when reason governs the desires and passions, an orderly and well balanced personality results. So, only knowledge can lead us to virtue. Finally, the well ordered life. The person who has the virtues of justice and wisdom knows the physical pleasure and allows them their proper place. So we still have to enjoy the pleasures of life. He knows that the pleasure of honor and reputation, and also enjoys them in the proper degree. Of course, we enjoy recognition. We enjoy the accolades, the congratulations, but they must be in the proper degree. Let's not rest too much on our personal successes. The truly happy person sets in order his own inner life and is his own master and his own law and is at peace with himself. I will leave you with this beautiful quote from Plato. He says, "The most virtuous of all men is he that contents himself with being virtuous without seeking to appear so." Don't tell anyone that you are a virtuous man. Just be content with yourself that you are doing the right thing, that you have understanding, you are wise in your understanding, you're courageous, you're temperate, and you are just. And it's not for you to tell other people or to advertise yourself as being virtuous, because when you do that, you are not virtuous at all. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you learned some good lessons from this presentation. Stay safe, everyone, and God bless.